Here we are. Welcome back. Another episode. C-Suite Unfiltered with Mike Andes. How are we doing today, sir?
On the road, dude. We're on the road. We're taking the pod on the road.
The pod is on the road. It's official. When you both have mics and you're not in the same location, that means we've made it. And in my opinion, so
I think
yes,
this might actually be better. There's definitely nice things about being in person, but sometimes,
Yeah.
like from a viewer's perspective, this
Yeah.
is better.
See, I get more distracted this way, but because I have too much on my screen, more than likely. But we'll get into it. We'll get into it.
Dude, just
So,
full screen it down in the bottom right hand.
yeah, but I got my articles. I got my
Oh,
references.
I got you.
We're
I
gonna-
got
we're
you. You
gonna-
need
we're
a
gonna dive
secondary
deep.
screen, bro. You need a
I know.
secondary screen.
I'm
bro.
traveling. I don't have the secondary screen. Maybe I'll just buy one for a month. And then
I'll give you one when you get back. I got an extra one.
Okay.
I got one
good.
that's portable.
Oh, sick. Well, thank you. There we go. Awesome. Well, we're going to jump into it here. We are off the politics train because there is a story that I did really actually want to get into that kind of broke. No, it's not like breaking news, but it was made headlines, I think, in September, and then kind of got buried by the election cycle. So have you heard about Red Lobster's new CEO?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we're going to get into that. What are your thoughts on young CEOs, considering that, in the great world of business, you would be considered a young CEO? Let's just start right there.
What do I think about them?
Yeah, what do you think about young CEOs in general?
What?
Or
I
let's
can't-
get specific, young CEOs taking over large, well-known brands. Let's go there.
Yeah, like I think sometimes overall, like if I had to bet on young versus old, I would go with old. I think that for a brand like theirs that needs a significant change on their branding, it's not a bad idea to get a younger CEO, but also you can hire a good marketing firm or you can hire a good
Right.
marketing, like a good CMO, a chief marketing officer that understands social media would probably do them just as much good in terms of like getting someone younger. So like I feel like age I don't think has anything to do with whether or not someone's qualified. However, it also is a pretty easy barometer of how much experience you have in life. And so for anyone younger, the reason why most people are impressed with youth in terms of success is because you don't have the experience. And so usually you are leaning on more raw talent. But in terms of performance, if I had to make a bet, I would bet on someone that's older, 100%.
I think that might surprise some of our listeners. I don't disagree with you. I think I see where that's coming from. And I guess to fill in the gap, if someone listening is like, wow, I thought Mike would say, maybe younger CEOs have more of an advantage, more cutting edge, more technological savvy, if you will, technology savvy, typically younger generations, because they're just kind of born into it, bred into it, if you will. But one thing that you recently said in an internal meeting with just Augusta owners is that you always respect the people that have reps. And actually, if you want to kind of talk about that a little bit with, the folks listening to the podcast that aren't in Augusta, you talked about business owners get to different levels. Do you remember that kind of conversation you had?
No, I don't.
Okay.
But I would say
it was from
Go
a
ahead.
mastermind. It was from a mastermind, and you were talking about how you're going to get to level 50 one day, and you're going to look
Yeah.
back at level 19,
Yeah,
and be
yeah.
like, "Oh man, that was so easy," right? So
Yeah.
that's where I think age has the advantage. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, like age is completely separate from level of skill. However, if you have to take a distribution and an average, people that are older can have more skills because they've had the opportunity to have more reps. Whether or not they've put the reps in is completely up to them. If they've spent their entire lifetime watching Netflix, they do not have the skills to run the company. But as a broad assumption that they've been in business and in the game and trying to learn, they've just had more opportunity to get more reps. And that's why even like when you look at bodybuilders, it's actually not younger guys. They're sometimes deep into their 30s when they actually hit max. And that's, the reason for that is because they've just had more time to do the reps. Physically, they actually are struggling a lot more to put on mass. They're struggling in terms of their skeleton. They get injured a lot more than like an early 20-year-old, but they just simply have not had the reps at 20 years old that someone in their late 30s have had. Also, if you just look at everyone listening, just look at your own individual self and ask yourself, like, okay, 5 years ago, was I a better entrepreneur than I am today? And I think most of us would say no. We've learned a lot. We go through stuff. We realize we make mistakes, and we're introspective enough to realize, oh, I shouldn't have done that. That was a stupid thing I did. And if And if we're self-aware enough to do that, we will improve skills, and the reps that we put in will actually put on more muscle. And so I would just say, assuming again, if I'm not comparing two people and I can't
Mhm.
adequately judge skill, if I just have to take age alone, I'd go after the person that has had the capacity for more reps. Whether or not they've put them in is completely a different story.
Mhm. It's almost like age is but a number, but also reps is but a number, right? And when you talk about the 10,000 hours principle, I can't remember who came up with that. It's was that Malcolm Gladwell? Someone came up with this 10,000 hours principle that if you put in 10,000 hours, you have become kind of a master, if you will, of whatever topic or thing that you're getting into. And if you look at the average person, full-time job typically works about 2,000 hours a year. So it's going to take you 5 years to master that. Well, you can shorten that timeline by the amount of reps, right? If age is just a number, well, the more reps I have over time, if I work the average 2,000 hours a year, yes, in 50 years, I will have worked more, statistically speaking, than someone that's 30 years old. But that 30-year-old could, super stack everything and do 3,000, 4,000 hours a year. And now they have put in more reps. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think it's similar to a muscle in that, like, you can put in more reps at the gym, but you actually can start to deteriorate your muscle too. So I think there is an element of time of repairing a muscle that you could definitely argue the fact that in business, you do not need that. You can go from one skill to the next to the next. And as long as you're learning it and executing on it, you can have much more exponential improvement versus a muscle having to be broken down and then you wait for it to repair. You break it again, you wait for it to repair. It's just like, how disciplined are you to reduce the amount of wasted time between skill acquisition? And I think we talk about customer acquisition, but skill acquisition is like another thing that I think we should be measuring consistently.
Do you think that, and I know you like to use a lot of personal fitness and physical fitness analogies. So put that aside. Let's talk strictly from a business perspective. Is it better to have imperfect reps, but a higher amount, or to have more perfect reps and a lower amount? What would you say?
What do you think I'm going to say?
I think you're going to say more reps.
100%,
Yeah,
because you don't know what
imperfect.
right is. You don't know if you don't know what good looks like, if you don't know what perfection looks like, just take a stab at it, and then assuming that you're able to be self-aware enough, and you're able to be self-introspective enough to know how far off was I. That will get you closer to the center, like, to perfection faster. In terms of just like take more shots on goal.
Yeah, it's like what's that phrase? You become more lucky the more you work, or something. There's a phrase around that. It's catchier than that, but it's the same thing. Like, just put in more work, and you're going to increase your chances of luck, i.e., your chances of success. And I think you go back to kind of the gym analogy or the lifting analogy, that there's a certain way to twist your wrist or your forearm or whatever to engage a different muscle. Well, you might not figure that out, but all of a sudden you hit one rep and you feel it. You're like, oh, it's different now. I feel that in my forearm differently because the way I twisted my wrist. Well, you figured that out because you just did a bunch more reps, not because you sat and figured that out and did one rep and then like waited 30 minutes to analyze every single movement you made. So, anyways, jumping back to the CEO of Red Lobster here. So, really
How old
cool
is he?
guy.
I
Yeah.
listened to like a while back. So I know
Yeah.
they went to chapter 11, I believe,
Yep. Yeah.
bankruptcy. In part because their marketing in the past was like, get free shrimp. I think, like,
Yes.
unlimited shrimp. Let's go.
Oh yeah.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
we're gonna dive into all of that. So I got a news article. So NBC just did a deep dive with him again. So his name is Damola Adamal Kuhn, I believe. It's hard to say. I apologize for mispronouncing it, but Adamole Kuhn is his last name. So we'll just call him Adam. That makes it easier for me. But the new CEO of Red Lobster, so he's 35 years old. And this article that I'm referencing from NBC News just came out yesterday at time of recording, and they did a deep dive with him. But basically, Red Lobster needed to close 100 of its 640 restaurants earlier this year, and their visits were down about 43% in October of this year compared to the same time last year. So they has since emerged from bankruptcy, ushering in a new era for the once major seafood chain. Fortress Investment Group is kicking in $60 million toward reshaping the brand's new value offerings, service, and atmosphere. So the new CEO, Adam, as I'm going to call him, stepped in. He previously was the CEO of PF Chang's, a large Chinese restaurant, I believe, and he took their annual revenue from around 700 million to over a billion, which was crazy to see him do that in like a 2 to 3 year period. And he jumped on with Red Lobster because he's a big fan of the brand, and they thought that he was the right fit. So initial reactions to a well-known kind of almost household brand name with 650 restaurants bringing in a 35-year-old.
Yeah, I think so. First off, if this guy can do this again, I like is going to do a turnaround at this level, like so it's a much larger level than previously. He will have two notches on his belt, and his next pay package will be worth billions of dollars. We're seeing this even with like Nichols from Starbucks coming from Chipotle, and so everyone will continue, and they probably have license to criticize this pay packages for these CEOs. But when you look at, say, for example, I know I'm pivoting here, sorry,
Yeah, you're good.
to like what's happening with Nichols and with Starbucks, like the shareholder has gained $20 billion of value simply because he came on board. So like, is that a good thing for shareholders? When his pay package is $100 million, basically signing bonus. Well, he has the track record from Chipotle, and he did it before. And so, if this person, Adam, let's just call it Adam, can pull this off at Red Lobster, he likely will then, if he can do this over 3 to 5 years, and say bring them out of bankruptcy, make them very relevant on social media, very relevant in terms of financially getting a return for the investors that came in and bought them out of Chapter 11, and they flip it, for example, or they take it public. This guy's at his 40th birthday will be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So some of the stats from this article: overall visits to full service restaurants are down 2% in the third quarter of this year. TGI Fridays had to close 50 restaurants and filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy this year as well. And many restaurants are experiencing 35% decreases in year over year in-store visits. Now that doesn't account for, restaurants that have curbside pickup for delivery, but 35% down year over year is kind of the average that this article is saying for in-store visits. And then one thing that was really interesting specific to Red Lobster is that the new CEO says that 40% of their guests are over the age of 55. And so what he's trying to do is really strike a balance. In his words, he said, we need to strike a balance between keeping our core demographic happy. Like, obviously, if 40% of our clientele are over 55, we want to keep them happy because they're great. They're great for business. But we need to appeal to that younger generation, and we need to, bring people back into the restaurants, because I think COVID really changed a lot of that, and this article addresses that. But he has this one quote that I really like. I'm going to try to find it real quick here. He said, just give me 1 second. Sorry, I highlighted it and it's gone. Where'd it go?
That secondary screen will be great, bro.
I know. There it is. Okay. He said in this article, everybody knows Red Lobster, but how do you translate awareness to relevance? So what would you do in this case? He knows that 40% of his regular customers are 55 and older. He clearly needs to appeal to that other 60% to keep the restaurants alive. And ultimately, his goal is to increase revenue as well as increase restaurant count. So they shut down 100. He wants to increase top line revenue. He wants to increase bottom line profits. But he also said he wants to increase the amount of units that they have as well.
Are they franchised? No, they're not. They're corporately owned, right?
Yep, yeah, corporately owned.
What would I do? Well, I have like imperfect data here, so my perspective would be limited. So I think obviously from a social media perspective, you have to become very relevant. I would lean heavily into the quality of the food, because that's probably their weak point. Because especially as you go into a price sensitive market, even though fine dining will come down, those fine diners shift somewhere. You go more fast casual, or they go into like Red Lobster is definitely more achievable than a lot of other restaurants. It's not like at the top of the market. And so if you're going to be mid-market, just try to become a premium brand with average pricing. And so I would be really going after like the quality of the food, showing that when you come in here, this is not like an Applebee's, this is not like a TGI IF or whatever it is, Think Guys Friday situation. Yep. Like, this is quality, this is good seafood, here's where it comes from, here's the people that are fishing for the food, here's the people that caught the food, here's how it's delivered, here's how it's prepped. I would lean heavily into that for the older market, and then I would go after the younger market on a social media aspect, and I'd probably lean heavily into health around seafood versus other meats. So I would probably go like, hey, here's a burger, here's a salmon burger. I would
Hmm.
really try to break down from the health aspect, which would capture millennials, people that have the money to be able to spend on healthier food. But then I'd make sure that I'm anchored with quality imaging and branding to so that when people that are in the 55 plus community can no longer afford a $70 steak, they come and spend $30 at my restaurant. That's kind of what I'd probably be
Hmm.
doing, but I have like no data, so
Yeah, yeah.
it's a shot in the dark.
Yeah, you're good. And I didn't pull a ton of data. I wanted to keep it kind of high level, focused on CEO strategy and really like implementation and direction of a brand. One thing that he said that you'll really like, so as you alluded to, so he cut out the endless shrimp campaigns that they would do.
Promo, yeah.
Yeah, the promo. Thank you. That's the word. Yeah, he cut out the endless shrimp promo. And when asked in an interview, I thought this was hilarious. Great response. They were like, so endless shrimp was a big selling point for a lot of people to go to Red Lobster. Why did you cut that program out? And he said, because I can do math. Like
Yeah.
that was his answer. And I loved it because it's just simple economics. It's like, we're not making money on this. We're losing money. Why would we have this promotion? So he cut that out completely, which did turn some people off. But his job is to turn the business around, not keep people coming into his restaurant at a loss.
Yeah, two things. I think any restaurant that has endless anything, you're devaluing the brand. So like it's very rare you think of buffets as like this very nice place to eat traditionally, unless you're paying top dollar. So either you're gonna be really expensive or you're going to have portion control. Secondly, I also think that someone else could go into this situation and have a different perspective, and that is like I can do math, but like, can we just chalk this up to a loss leader? And then how do we actually grease the wheels of upselling and cross selling better inside of the store? So the first place I would actually go with all of this is cost reduction in terms of efficiency, and secondly, like, so we talked about the branding aspect, like so like going after the older ones with the value and quality, and then going after the health side with the younger people. I would then go in stores and look at efficiency, like how do we actually reduce costs, but then secondly, how do I retrain every single waiter and waitress to make sure they are able to upsell someone from the $20 up unlimited shrimp to a $50 meal? And so whether that be carrying around desserts, whether that be really making sure that the drink menu is dialed in and it's something that's super popular, I'd make that very trendy I'd be pushing that heavily on social media. I'd try to make sure that relevant events in social media are brought into the beverage category, to get them in the door. Because if I can get them on a $15 drink and they get two of those, I could care less about the stinking shrimp that I'm making low margin on, even if I do mark it up. And so I do believe that there's a way to be able to take a waiter and waitress and turn them into a salesperson, but that most of the time revolves around training. And that's usually when you go into those sort of restaurants, they have nothing. They do not upsell you. They're not like, you don't come and you ask, do you want dessert? You walk around, you have the 3 pieces of pie and say, which of these would you like? And it's in front of them, and they're gonna grab one far more often than if you just ask them, do you want a dessert menu? Like, first off, have the stinking dessert menu on the thing with the good pictures. Secondly, don't even ask. Walk up to them with dessert menu. Which one of these do you want? These are the type of things that you can take a lower ticket item like shrimp that you might be a loss leader on and go up higher. And this is why grocery stores make money, because they put the milk and the eggs and the things that you need at the very back. So you have to get through all the other quote upsells and cross sells before you're able to actually make the purchase.
Have you ever been to a Red Lobster?
I don't know. I'm making broad assumptions.
Yeah.
I don't think I have.
No, you're good. I
don't
haven't
think I
either.
have.
So we're not
Let's go.
experts in this. By
Like
any
I said,
means.
no data. No data.
No
over
data.
here.
We've never been. That's where like we have a little bit of bias. We're from the Pacific Northwest. Fresh seafood is readily available pretty much everywhere. So I don't know where the concentration of their stores are, but
Yeah.
I agree with you to that point. Like same thing Costco does with the chickens. Like everybody knows you can't sell a roasted chicken for $5, but they put it in the back of the store and they know it is their loss leader. They lose tens of millions of dollars
It's good,
on
dude.
chickens
It's
every
good.
year. But you know that when I walk to get that chicken, I'm going to see a $40 thing for my house that I definitely don't need, that they're making a 50+% margin on. So, yeah, I think that's a good approach to it as well. One thing that he said that I really liked, because obviously, people are going to ask about it. It's low hanging fruit in an interview, is age. And they were like, hey, you're 35. There are going to be people that you're going to have to that are going to report to you, that are going to be older, on the board in different departments, this, that, or the other. And they're like, how do you feel being a 35-year-old CEO? What does that look like for you of this big brand? And one thing he said was interesting, and this is a quote, I wrote it down. He said, if you are insecure about something, referring to his age, you give it power. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. However, from his perspective, I think that you also need to be aware that this is a relevant thing to every other human being that's reporting to you, and it will
Mm-hmm.
cross their mind. And so, being sensitive to that and realizing that your quote age deficit will have to be compensated with with a skill increase is the thing. Like any I would say any really good executive or person that's going to report to him, if they're good, they will judge him based upon one thing and one thing alone. That's, is he skilled? Like, does he do a better job? And so I think for anyone that feels inadequate, and even if he feels like behind closed doors that he's inadequate to do this, it doesn't matter. It will come down to whether or not he has the skills to actually turn the company around, and whether or not the decisions that he makes actually results in positive outcomes. If that starts to happen, he starts to get a track record. Like, evidence of success, even in a boardroom, is extremely important. Like, this is why you have someone like Steve Jobs just scream at his board, because he had so much evidence of success in turning the company around. They're going to listen. But if he came back and everything he said flopped, no one would listen to him when he yelled. And so it's a matter of like, oh, well, I should yell at my board. It's like, no, you have no evidence of success like Steve Jobs did. And so I think it's a matter of like your track record will speak for itself. This is what I talk about all the time. Like, let your game performance prove how hard you practiced.
Yeah, I like that. And then this is another quote he had in one of his interviews, very short and sweet. I'm obviously taking it a little bit out of context here, but the interviewer is asking him about, his work schedule and how he doesn't really believe in work-life balance. You share a similar ethos to him, that there isn't really this balance, if you will. But I like this simple sentence he said. He said, work is purpose. And that was just like his answer to this really probing question. He said, work is purpose. Now, I'm not expecting all of my employees to, do X, Y, and Z like I do. But for me, my definition of work is purpose. What are your thoughts on that definition?
Yeah, like, it's easier to say that when you have equity and you have stock options and you have other things, and that is the what the go-to is for everyone that hears that. And I agree. If you have a $2 million outcome versus a $200 million outcome, it seems to improve your definition of whether or not you want to work. However, I would say that that mentality is what got him into this current position. And so I agree with the characterization that that is because of his incentives. I agree 100%. However, the reason is because when he was also incentivized at $15 an hour to make $18 an hour, if he did something slightly better, he probably had the same ethos. And so the ethos does ring true, and it scales up with the size of the compensation package, with the responsibilities that are given, in my opinion. Because if you trace this back, usually, even when someone wasn't making a lot of money, they still had the same ideologies. And so it's easy to judge, though, when they have such massive compensation packages tied to their performance. It's easy, like, yeah, of course you don't want to work. Of course you don't want to have work-life balance. You're making $100 million, and that $100 million is weighing in the balance of your performance. Therefore, you show up to work and you don't believe in work-life balance. Agreed. They probably had the same exact mentality when he was working for $8 an hour as a busser and washing dishes. That if I can just get above this, I'll make $12 an hour, which is a 50% increase in pay. And so that ideology usually starts to compound in someone's career if they just stick to it. And if he's working 80 hours a week, he will get done twice as much as someone else is doing in 40. And so what they've done in 15 years of their career, he'll do in 7, or he'll do in 8.
Yeah, if you want to wax philosophical or Southern Baptist, if you will, idle hands are the devil's playground, right? And I like that definition. Work is purpose. Like, man is made to work. We are made to create, to build, to ultimately help those around us. And whether it's just serving them lobster for dinner or whether it's building houses, like, it is good to put yourself towards a mission. And I think that I agree with the statement being as simple as it is. You can extrapolate and look at payment packages or this, that, or the other. The core of the message is it is good to work, right? If you are doing something that is good for the community or not destructive to the community, it is good, period. And that's why I like work is purpose.
I just had a funny thought since you brought
Yeah,
up
hit me with it.
Southern Gospel or whatever you talked
Yeah,
about.
Southern Baptist.
Southern Baptist. So this guy's name is Adam. The first thing Adam got was a job. That's
That's
right.
true. Yeah, that's our abbreviated version of his
Yeah.
last name. I just don't. I hate butchering people's names, and I apologize. His first name is Damola. I can say that confidently. The last name, Adam something. I apologize once again to anyone that knows how to pronounce it. But yeah, I just wanted to get your kind of take on that. And then I was like, well, let me just kind of zoom out. Okay. Red's Lobster, I don't believe is a Fortune 500 company. But I did look up on Fortune magazine the average age of CEOs. This is data from 2023.
Can
And
I
the
guess?
average age, take a guess. Yep. I was going to ask you.
Okay, is this of Fortune 500 companies?
This is Fortune 500 CEOs.
Got it. Okay. 53.
You're a little low, so it's 57.7. So
Wow.
just under 58 years old is the average Fortune 500 CEO age.
Interesting. That should be
Yeah.
like the cutoff for the presidency.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough.
If you're
But I
gonna be
just
the
thought I'd look
CEO
at it.
of
Yeah.
the country, you should probably be under 80 years old.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. So but that's where it's at. So I just, I thought it was interesting. Hey, they're bringing in this young CEO, fresh look, whatever it is. He's obviously making some changes, and there's no data because he's only been in the driver's seat for 2 to 3 months, it seems. But it'll be interesting to revisit this. Maybe I'll put a reminder in my calendar. Hey, maybe we revisit this in 6 months and see, did he make any changes? What did the first quarter he stepped into look like versus Q1 of say 2025? Obviously, you and I agree. Age is but a number. Do you have the skills? Can you put in the reps? So I'm just excited. I think it's a cool story to see a well-known brand be kind of given over to someone at a younger age, and hopefully he can kind of relate the brand to that millennial base and Gen Z and all that.
It also speaks to they want a bunch of shakeup. They need it because they're in bankruptcy. So
100%.
if they were doing well, this is probably not the move, right?
Yeah. All righty. Well, that is young CEOs. Now, this is something that I have. You're going to probably have follow-up questions on this. This is a random tweet I saw, but I really liked it. And I'm probably going to have a really hard time explaining it because it came with not a graphic, but almost like a GIF. And I wanted to hear what your thoughts were on this. All right. In the last 20 years, software ate the world. In the next 20 years, AI will eat software.
This is like semantics. AI is software. AI has been
Right.
around for a long time. If anyone thinks is this saying that it's going to eat software jobs?
So basically what it's saying, and that's why there was this GIF that went with it. And like I said, I saw it. I quickly copied the text, but I didn't screenshot or save the tweet. So that's my fault. But basically the GIF was imagine a desk with a laptop. Right. And there's a calendar, and then there's all these different things, and there's a notes app, and there's books. And it what the GIF is doing is takes the calendar, and then it becomes a calendar icon on the computer. And then it takes the book, and it becomes an audible, icon on the computer. So it's saying the world is being eaten by software. We can reduce everything that we use on a daily basis to pieces of software on a computer now. And then basically the computer shrinks to headphones. Because that's what AI will do. It'll just be you just have it either, wearable tech, right? Or Neuralink, like Elon's pushing, right? That'll just be there, and you won't even need, yes, AI is software, but you will not have interactive software where you have a physical computer or a physical phone anymore. You'll just have a headphone jack. You'll have a Neuralink, whatever it is.
Which is still software. You could say that AI might eat hardware.
Yeah.
But AI is software. These are semantics.
Yeah, and it was saying software ate the world, AI will eat software. I agree that it's semantics, but what are your overall thoughts on kind of that progression? How aggressively we saw this tech curve since the .com boom, that now most everybody in developed countries has supercomputers literally in their pocket. And then what's the next 20 years look like with AI? Do we even have supercomputers? Are we even using phones? What does the interface look like? The UX, all that kind of stuff.
If anyone thinks that AI is going to somehow replace humans and extraordinary developers and coders, they have never met a superior engineer. They haven't. And that would have been me 2 years ago. Being oh, dude, AI, we're going to be so much more efficient and blah, blah, blah. Great. you go step into the room and talk to some of the engineers that are extremely high level, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry, AI will not be able to outperform them right now. Now they might, and it might be able to outperform them in terms of cranking out code or solving problems, but it is not going to come from a strategic standpoint for them to understand and know what the customer wants. And so there, I was in the camp of AI will take out the whole idea of having SaaS as a service, and software as a service, and like everyone's just going to have their own and they'll build their own. Look, when you start talking to people that actually know what they're talking about in engineering, like we are decades away from software, from AI, quote unquote, being able to replicate itself. Like this is the equivalent of robots taking over the world, is AI taking over the job of an engineer. That is the equivalent. Like if you look at those two different worlds, software running the world, being ran by AI, is the equivalent of robots coming and taking over this hardware world that we live in. And so, like I listened to the engineer meeting the other day for Copilot. It's like these people are on a different level, and AI will never be able to make the decisions that they're making inside this meeting. And when I hear those meetings, it makes me more focused on the fact that like there are going to be people that will write off software. And this whole AI wave, we all like it's just the same thing happened around Bitcoin. The same thing happened when, like interest rates went really low, and everyone was like, selling, altcoins and the whole nine yards. Like it is a facade.
Yeah.
AI has been around for a very long time, and it's existed in Amazon searches, Google searches, YouTube searches for a very, very long time. And so we have got this new label that we like to stick on things. And most of the people that are doing all the sticking and writing all these reports have never talked to engineers. And I would throw myself in that camp a couple years ago. But when you start to talk to an engineer, not just like an average engineer that like learned coding in high school, but someone who has been in this industry for 10 or 20 years, and their fundamental knowledge of the back end versus front end, how things are connected, how the code interacts with the hardware and the user interface, and understand all these elements, their job is very secure. So I think that what AI does do is replaces mediocre and low performers 100%. I think it takes the top quartile of team, whether it be any position, any job. It'll take the top quartile and make them more efficient. It'll take the bottom 75% and make them have no job, because they are no longer needed. They do not come up with strategy. They are simply there to push pencils and type in keys. They use their hands and they do not use their head. And if you're only using your hands, and you're not coming up with creative strategies to cut waste, creative strategies to produce more revenue, creative strategies to be able to make things more efficient, if you're not, then you are going to be replaced. Whether it be at software, hardware, any level of answering phones, doing emails. It's like, okay, for example, I write emails. I'm going to be replaced by AI. Possibly. Okay. Unless you use empathy, you sell, you cross-sell, you upsell every single opportunity. You're looking for a way to generate more revenue for the business, and you make up for your wage by 10x simply because you have that skill and ability that you can empathize with the customer, take them from being mad into being happy, and then be able to sell them more products. That AI is not doing that. Sorry. It'll take inputs, it'll take words, and it'll spit out stuff, and it will not empathize with the human. And so, anyways, all of us say, I would only be concerned if you were an underperformer. If you were an above average performer, you'll take the skills, or you will take the tools that are given from AI, from software, and it'll make you more efficient.
Yeah, the key word that you said there multiple times was strategy. So do you think that kind of the key for anyone worried, I guess, about losing their job or their status due to AI, they need to focus on strategic decision making, strategic problem solving. And then I would say, you mentioned empathy and sales ability and things of that nature. I would categorize that as like subjective decision making, right? Because AI can do objective decision making, right? If 1 + 1 = 2, AI can take that objective truth and then extrapolate from there. But there's subjectivity when a customer's mad. How do I deal with that and turn it into a positive thing? That's going to be more subjective decision making. Would you say those are kind of the two key elements for anyone wanting to, I guess, push their career further, not even concerning AI, but also worried about, I don't want to lose my job to AI, that subjectivity and that strategic thinking?
Yeah, like it's even like with Jocko's thing at the muster. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was their thing like leadership is everything? Or leadership? What was like
Leadership
their
is a skill.
leadership is a skill? And at first I'm like, man, they're elevating leadership so much. Like it's about doing stuff. But ultimately, if you actually believe that AI will take things over, the doing of things will become commoditized. It will be who does leadership. And I don't mean leadership of just people, I mean leadership of the robots, leadership of the software, who actually makes the inferences that AI is making. Like these are models, they are created by humans that are predictive in nature, but they are simply built by a human that then is able to scale it by a bazillion times using software. And so it's like, okay, so if X, do Y. Someone had to make that connection. That's a human. That is a strategy. That's a form of leadership that then 3 bazillion other functions begin to follow. And so how do I create strategy becomes how do I become a leader? Whether it be a leader of people, a leader of code, a leader of hardware, a leader of robotics. Like that is who will win this game. And this is why I always say it, and it's unfortunately very, very sad and very, very true. The rich will become richer and the poor will become poorer when you have software being added or any sort of technology, because it's simply the matter of people who will use it versus who will be displaced from it. And so I would encourage any person to gain skills because those are the skills that will be required for leading the code, leading the hardware, leading people. And those are irreplaceable skills.
Yeah, that's good. I love it. Anything else on that? Otherwise, we can probably just wrap it up.
Let's go, dude. What's your
All right.
non-financial advice?
I have not. Well, I had something, but I'm going to go with something different since you
Okay.
referenced Jocko Willink and the Muster. One of his quotes from the Muster was, I wrote it down in my notebook. I don't have it in front of me, so hopefully I remember it correctly. So this might not be word for word, but he said, if leadership isn't a skill, then we have nothing to teach you. And their whole conference is about leadership and ownership and leading your team and creating more opportunities for your business. So he kind of basically deconstructed the thoughts of his doubters. Like, you are paying money to be here to learn from me. But if leadership isn't a skill, then I have nothing to teach you. I really like that thought process. So just coattailing off what you were saying, leadership is a skill. You can learn it. It's hard to learn, but it takes time if you're willing to put in the effort. You can get better at leading. It's not inherent. People are not necessarily gifted to be leaders. Some people are maybe more naturally skilled in leadership qualities, but it is a skill that can be learned. So go out and learn it. That's my not financial advice.
Well, and for someone that's saying that, like I would say, if it's amorphous and it's very difficult to learn, probably a good chance the AI won't be able to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
So that's why I said, like,
Good
if
point.
you're thinking about like, how do I not get replaced? Be a leader, lead
Yep.
code, lead hardware, or lead people. Those would be very difficult to ever routinize because, to your point, it requires subjective decision making. So.
Yeah.
My non-financial advice.
Yeah.
All right, folks. So my non-financial advice is not deep at all. It's just spend money. Here we go. So, buy a second computer. All right. Hear me out. Hear me out. Okay. So I've operated on the logic of having one computer. 1 second. Hope I don't break anything. Okay. So one laptop. I've had this one for almost 5 years now. Great 2020 M1 chip. It's like a fantastic MacBook Air. I think I got it for $999. Lowest specs, works like a workhorse. Let's go. Now, I'm getting a second one. The reason I'm getting a second one is because I have found that when I come to work and I have multiple screens, great. I'm trying to work on one thing, but the other screen is still there.
Yeah.
And so my philosophy is I'm going to get a different screen. It's coming in today. I'm going to have an iMac right here. And it's going to be, this is my focus computer, the iMac. And then
Okay.
I'll only bring this bad boy out if I am doing Slack, WhatsApp, email, etc. So this is the most bougie skill hack productivity thing. Just go buy another computer and be like, this one has no apps. This one has apps. And so the iMac is simply going to be to log on to Google Docs and Canva. And
Nice.
so creating presentations for conference, doing stuff, getting planning for like, I almost said mercy, stuff
Yeah.
we're working on for next year,
Yep,
planning
yep.
stuff. And then this one, if this is out as my desk, it means like I'm in manager mode. So I am taking messages. I'm an open invite for people to distract me. So it's
There
going
you
to
go.
be great.
I like it. I'm excited for you to go on a business turnaround in like 3 months, and someone will have taken this advice, and you'll be like, "Why do all your office staff have 2 computers?"
No, yeah, okay. But we assume that you have long periods of undistracted work that's required on
Yep.
something like a workshop or like I think I started on this in June or July. So like it's great. I have a secondary screen and I know I could technically close this, but when you have the same hardware picking up like it has the app, it
I get
has
it.
the mail icon, it has the Slack. It's tempting. So I'm just going to remove it. It's going to literally be just a portal into the web. So like what's cool about this is you can get really cheap specs. Like I just need to connect to the internet, right? So I'm getting the cheapest one. Same thing with my laptop. I don't do like hard things on it. So it's like this one's $999. I think the iMac I'm getting is $1,200 is the lowest spec iMac. So we'll see. I'll let you know if it has any improvement on my productivity. But the real reason is the current screen that I have is so pixelated. It doesn't even do 1080p.
Yeah.
So like my eyes start to really hurt after I'm looking at it for a long time. And it's I think it's 11 inches. It's very small.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get, a little bit bigger. My eyes have been hurting a lot. So
For first world problems.
yeah, I know. Over here complaining about the size of my screen, my secondary screen.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's it. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe.